the road in the next.
For me to write the questions on this?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, please, yeah, just write it down.
Yeah.
All these tools will be available to us. We'll bring them all together. You know.
Open-ended. Any comments? What do you see coming down the road? You're
Yeah.
concerned about beyond where things are.
As it relates to the environment, I
Cumulative impacts, all of the different issues that you're faced with in here, like air quality, chemicals, environment. In the orientation earlier was mentioned about, any physical and social impacts you're, associated with those as well.
I think I screenshot the pictures. I need the question. If I know.
What are the main stressors in the future, the next 10 to 20 years that you think will impact the well-being of you and your community?
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
So,
Go.
I definitely think, I guess it's premature, because we're not in 2025. We realize
Yeah.
some of the impacts of this new administration. But I am particularly concerned with, talks of gutting the EPA, that was already not doing a great job. And so those implications around, more sort of untethered petrol companies moving into and next door to, which are oftentimes underserved communities, without regulation.
I think from the same point out, from a public health perspective, it's the political determinants of health and how they're going to impact the social determinants of health. And that's a big stressor for those of us who suffered worse the first and last to recover.
Yes.
And so some of the burdens that people experience now will only be exacerbated. So high energy bills, how heat impacts your physical and emotional health. Loss of our tree canopy, and how long it will take to restore it. And for communities to see the impact of having a restored tree canopy. I can't remember what the number is, but it was hundreds of thousands of trees lost after Hurricane Katrina and have not been restored. There are efforts around the city, but I don't know how long. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a data person, but I don't know how long it'll take for us to see the impact of a restored tree canopy.
Is that especially in the city you're talking about for trees, or is it?
So I'm
Yeah.
talking about New Orleans.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. New Orleans is the urban heat island capital for the country. So we have the lowest density of trees in an urban setting.
Is there current policy on replacement?
Let me just say this, because I am my research is in the urban heat island deforestation.
Okay.
And so there is no consistency in enforcement of ordinances in Orleans Parish, speaking for Orleans Parish. There is, however, they're bringing together community groups to strategize on that, and there is a tree plan, a master tree plan. There is, we know how many trees were lost post Katrina, and that's in excess of 100,000 trees. But it's the consistency of enforcing trees, the planting of trees, who's planting trees. And then, of course, the environmental factors that once you planted a tree, they may not, especially with the summer 2023, we lost a lot of trees that were still in that establishment period. The city has received $8 million from the forestry, USDA forestry. However, the community organizations that receive that grant, the city, through the CEAs that the city is making folks sign with, the burden of insurance
is so high to be able to, reach the goals and objectives that was in that grant, that it's gonna be difficult for organizations to reach that standard,
Yeah.
that high standard, and it's a high standard.
And the insurance is to ensure the people planting the trees, or what's the?
The
what's
insurance, basically, in the short of it, is shifting the burden from the city of New Orleans to the organizations who are planting the trees.
That's insurance that something goes wrong when they plant, or?
No, the liability.
Oh, liability, it's all liability. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so if you're a small community-based organization, and they're requiring you to have, at least $1 million of coverage, then that's protecting, that could wipe out an organization if something occurs.
In terms of the people planting those trees. Yeah, okay.
And I do want to say about the tree planting, I know that we were approached to fill out a grant to place trees in our community, but it was heavy on resources that was needed for like time management, making sure it grow. Like, we're not into, I don't know if it's the right word, but horticulture or anything like that. So I'm like, it was really like heavy on the community versus the government being responsible.
Yeah.
So who could do the actual planting, you're saying, didn't really have the people?
Yeah, they make it water.
A minimum, the city ordinance says a minimum of 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And a maximum of 3 during those hot seasons.
Yeah.
And then any tree that's vandalized, did not thrive, or what is the third one? Vandalized thrivability and survivability. You have to replace that tree.
With your own resource?
Yes.
Yeah. would be
For
very hard.
for a year, so, and then your year starts over. Once you replace the
So
tree.
that's real barriers to doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that for, if I contact an organization and say I do want, or they contact me and say, and I agree to get a tree in front of my property, is that the case? Like, the tree dies, then it's my responsibility?
No, it's
Or
the organization.
Yeah.
It's the organization. Yeah.
It just wasn't worth it for
Yeah.
us. We do have insurance, but
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
worth it.
Just one clarifying question for Jane, on this tree ordinance, is it on private property or is it in public property?
On public property.
Okay,
The public rights of way.
okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
I think I mean, in addition to the things that you all have named, because absolutely, one of the key things that I'm worried about, well, 2 of them. One is, upriver from us is planned to be built a myriad of new chemical facilities. And there's already an existing array of new chemical production facilities upriver from us, and we pull our drinking water out of the Mississippi River. There's a lot of people who don't have faith in the New Orleans public drinking water system. I am one of them. But the costs of maintaining out the safety, even the minimal safety that we have right now of our public drinking water system, are going to skyrocket. And those costs are going to be put on ratepayers. So I'm particularly concerned about the fact that the city may not be prepared for how all the chemicals that they're gonna need to clean out of the water, because they're not accounting for all of what's upriver. They're just like, well, we do this one water treatment and that's all fine, except some of the chemicals that are coming down the river are, like, we don't do reverse osmosis on our water here. And so, like, that is the sort of gold standard of cleaning water, and we don't do it. We can barely keep the pump system, we can barely keep the pressure up enough in the line. We're under boil water advisories all the time. I mean, not all the time, but several times a year. And so I'm very, very concerned about the safety of public drinking water, and the ways that the city is like not prepared for any of that. Some of the turbines that power our water system were built, they're made out of wood. They were built in a long time ago.
Okay,
So that's one. And of course, that also informs the air quality, because all these petrochemical facilities are also gonna be emitting into the air. And when the wind blows toward New Orleans, we are breathing all that air. And that is not part of the city's like plan anticipation at all. And that coupled with the rising cost of electricity, the energy utility from the heat island effects is really gonna hit people hard. And that also takes a toll on health because I know many people, I mean, it takes a toll on health for a number of reasons. I think you were talking about the economic determinants of health, social determinants, there's also commercial determinants. I mean, that's essentially what this is the commercial determinants of health. Everything in New Orleans is gonna get more and more expensive, your basic utilities. And people are already being priced out of their homes because their insurance is too expensive. And of course, the homeowners insurance is being exacerbated by the proliferation of petrochemical facilities because of climate change. So we are just like, it just feels like it's piling on in a pocketbook, in a air and water quality safety, in a heat, like it just is, it's a lot coming.
Let me push back on you a little bit, Jane, on that one, because for transparency, I just was appointed to the Sewage and Water Board lead pipe replacement advisory committee. And so what I do know about the Sewage and Water Board is that the media gives them a bad reputation. So when we get boil water advisories, they have that transparency. It seems like it's a lot that's going out, but I'm more concerned about those water utilities upriver that don't report what's going into the river. So people have no clue. They're going on about their daily lives, not even realizing what jeopardy they may be in. However, the Sewage and Water Board, because they put out boil water advisories, even for me, sometimes it's but by law, when they reach that level, they have to report it. So for me, and what I see in working with them is that they're doing a really good job at putting the information out there to inform the public. Now, the issue with the Sewage and Water Board too has been the governance of the Sewage and Water Board, because it's a state agency, but it's regulated by Orleans Parish. And again, comes in those political determinants of health, the political struggles that we have on a city council of, hey, I want to do this, hey, I want to do that, not fully understanding how the whole system operates. So it's not all doom and gloom. I respect your opinion. But now that the Sewage and Water Board and DPW are coming together in one facility, because as you know before, part of the system was maintained by the Department of Public Works. So now with the last legislative session, all of that is going to come under the Sewage and Water Board, which will now allow them to operate the system holistically. My concerns are the fact that people suffer these traumas from these low impact disasters and then don't even realize what the cumulative impacts are on them. And so I'm heavy on engaging with residents to educate them, because let's be honest, the deals are being made in Congress and in the state legislature through back doors. While they may publicly say they don't believe in climate change, it's weather impacts. They're making the deals to protect those more affluent communities, whereas the Black and brown and indigenous folks, we're left struggling to try and figure it out because we're trying to play the game correctly by their terminology, but they're not playing the game back with us.
Right.
So I was under the impression, I sit on what is called the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, IMA, and we had a meeting a few months ago that addressed a possible sale of the Sewage and Water Board, some sort of, I don't exactly remember the details, but it spoke to the potential of like a hedge fund that was proposing the city council to come in and take over ownership. And the burden of the transfer was gonna fall on the citizens to take care of the cost.
I have not heard that, but know that that will require, a legislative approval, because think about it this way. The City of New Orleans doesn't own the
Right.
sewer and water board, yeah,
Yeah.
it's the state.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard that, I mean, I could do some checking around from folks in the state government.
Okay.
To find out about that, but I've not heard that.
I haven't heard that either. What I kind of heard was that the governance may switch back to the state for a little bit or so.
Yeah, that was floated out there about the governance, because that was part of the delay with the Sewer and Water Board taking over, because they had to know where that money was coming from. Was the money from, was first of all, was all the equipment in the budget that was allocated to DPW, was that coming over to the Sewer and Water Board, or would that remain with the city? So I think well, I know they worked that out. I'm wondering the whole system was taken over January 1st, started quoting on that one. But that was a part of the hang up, because that had to be worked out.
Clarifying question, the sewage and water board is private right now.
No,
No,
it's a state quasi agency,
it's our utility.
water utility.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it
For water.
covers how large an area?
Orleans
Orange
Parish.
Parish, yeah.
And
Just
it's our
one-
waste, yes, our
one
wastewater,
parish.
it's our wastewater and stormwater management and drinking water.
Yeah,
And the sale that Joe's talking about is to a private company?
That was the proposal that I was made aware of.
Okay.
I'm not sure how
Yeah.
valid that is.
I had,
Okay.
I had not heard that, yeah.
And then the other clarifying question is,
I can text
the
it.
concern is, if that goes through, then, this is the part I don't get, what is the burden on the community?
The financial burden for the transfer.
I see, okay,
Right.
Yeah,
Will show up in water bills?
yeah.
in water bills, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
and we already see some of, like, there are partnerships, the Steward and Water Board, and Angela, please correct me if I'm wrong, has with private entities, right? Private companies like Veolia and some others that do some of the pieces of what the Steward and Water Board does. This is very common for city
Yeah,
water
yeah.
systems. It's also quite, I mean, these partnerships with private companies are part of why Flint doesn't have clean drinking water right now. And so that is part of the concern also, whether it's being sold or just sort of, I'm gonna say abrogating, but like handing over its responsibilities to a private company.
Yeah.
And they always say it under that it's gonna save people money, but in the long term, it often ends up costing them.
I've not heard that, I'm trying to text them.
Yeah,
I've not heard that.
When you say the parish, is that the city of New Orleans, or is that much
They're
wider area?
contiguous.
Yeah.
Orleans Parish and the city of New Orleans have the same.
Okay,
border.
but not the suburban or whatever beyond
No.
the city. Okay.
That's other
That would
parishes
be
that have their
other boards
their own utilities, yeah.
that are run from the state as well, or that would be run locally?
No, they actually, I know Jefferson Parish and Saint Bernard Parish, they actually, they own their water utility, yeah.
Yeah.
They own their water. utility.
So why is New Orleans state run rather than locally run? Is that a
Oh,
whole
that
political-
that predates me,
That's-
yeah, that
okay,
predates
political.
me, yeah.
Racism is the short
Okay,
answer.
Okay.
But, yeah,
Yeah.
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 One other clarifying question I have, I think Angela mentioned this earlier in terms of and Jane as well, I think upriver.
Oh, let me give you some context. So
Yeah.
upriver is anything north
Alright.
of New Orleans,
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I understand.
Yeah,
The
okay.
clarifying question is, while there is no, or maybe lack of disclosure, isn't the utility going to test that water anyway? So that they would understand how to treat that water
Yeah.
for the residents of New Orleans and the parish.
Technically, yes.
Okay.
We
You don't trust
No,
them.
but yeah,
the regime
yeah.
is underfunded,
Mm.
inadequately supervised
Mhm.
by the state and federal government.
Okay,
Is also testing against levels that were set many decades ago and are not based on current science. These are issues across the board.
Yeah.
Scott, there's chairs in the closet if you want to grab one. And also there are political determinants
Okay.
of how, water testing gets done, reported, et cetera. And this is also not a constant, steady flow of things, right?
Okay.
It's passed at different locations, at different times of day, at different, and that determines
Got used to it?
where
Yeah.
you,
John Ben.
like, your levels.
The consistency is.
Consistency is a significant issue. Also, funding is a significant issue.
Yes.
And so I would say all these things across the board, upriver from us. I don't know exactly where the cutoff is, maybe you guys know, but which communities pull out of the river, their drinking water, and which ones don't. So I know I'm from Baton Rouge, I know Baton Rouge pulls out of an aquifer. And I don't know exactly where they start pulling out of the river, but it's like, it's somewhere southeast of Baton Rouge, but north of St. James. Scott, you might know, where do they start pulling drinking water out of the Mississippi River?
It's all the way up for to my knowledge.
Okay, but I know Baton Rouge doesn't, so,
Oh, they're on groundwater.
they're on aquifer water, yeah,
This is the problem.
because of Exxon, yeah. Anyway, there's myriad issues with the water. Also, Scott, before I forget.
Oh my God.
I've had this hat for like 2 months.
I'm sure that Orleans intake is at the Orleans.
Yes.
And if you've ever taken that tour, if you haven't, I probably should take that tour to be able to see how the water is intake
Mhm.
from the river and to see the transformation from the groundwater. Water to getting it into the lines to be able to distribute throughout the system.
Mhm.
And then it's back to point because we're thinking about 10, 20 years from now, there are emerging contaminants of concern. Has that been part of the conversation here?
Was it over 2 years in a row? The salt.
Yes.
Saltwater intrusion coming up upstream.
The flow of the river, you know.
Yeah.
So some of that is industrial, like.
They just had to move.
We're moving at 11:15, right?
I thought it was 11:10.
11:10.
There was a group chat that said, so.
Okay.
Like depleting. the aquifer. Yeah.
Blackman's Parish, yeah, 'cause it's a, we're seeing New Orleans East is rebounding, it's going up because there was a power plant that was such a large.
We're red.
Withdrawal of the groundwater, it was sinking New Orleans East for so long. That's all readable in the new satellite live. For the river.
I wanted to say we're sorry to cut you off, Scott. We need to move. I missed the chime.
Okay.
It chimed like 2 minutes ago, so
Okay.
we're on a rotation. So what's gonna happen is all of you are gonna stay together and go to the next room, which is D.
Mhm.
And then you'll have another question but you can carry on this
And
conversation.
if you want to leave any notes or give us any notes later, when we come back, that would be great as well. Yeah. Yeah, please. Flooding.
Flooding, okay.
Even talk about sea level rise.
Yes, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. People here, like, when it rains, like, the trauma comes out, like, it's, yeah, anyway. Oh, this is fun.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming by. Yeah. No problem.
We go here?
I think we could have an hour talk on any of these.
Yeah, I know. You should have. Yeah. Flooding, sea level. I think it's
It was,
I don't-
repetitive from Saturday.
Yeah.
Is it part of your research as well?
And we're starting a new research.
Mhm.
on repetitive trauma.
Okay. Hey, Ron.
It's the chime. apparently.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We're
We ignored the chime.
well, we didn't notice.
we didn't notice it. Yeah. We didn't notice it.
How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Good. So your group, how many were in your group?
It was a small group.
Oh.
It was
Yeah, there's
about-
like 3 of you guys.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay,
2 people.
Ali,
went to the
oh,
Yeah.
Ali,
Oh.
Justin.
Yeah.
so.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's office.
I think these are topics where once you get started, we could usually have an
Yeah.
hour or more on anything. so-
Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk.
Oh. What was the question you just?
what are the stressors?
Okay.
That's a
Oh, yeah.
good talk.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, you can.
There's a lot of
I'll-
issues, yeah.
We're here.
All right, get my bag.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that as well, but
What-
the
what-
future stressors, yeah.
Right, right.
The
that's
future
next
stressors, yeah.
question. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
It's good to be able to hear from people with lived experiences in places that we don't.
Yeah.
Where are you guys?
I'm from Seattle.
I just came from Seattle.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Please join us, yeah.
Let's
if
just-
John's coming.
I think he'll come back, but we can start.
We can start, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll do just a brief introduction, just
Yeah.
so we, some idea who's here. So I'm Andy Dannenberg. I'm in Seattle. I work in environmental health and urban planning.
And I'm Chris Lehman. I'm from Los Angeles. I work for LA Metro, and part of the committee.
Hi, everybody. Introductions?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
introduction.
John Ben from the National Academies.
Yeah.
Justin Cray, I live in New Orleans, I'm a planner, I'm also a planner and
Oh,
photographer.
Oh,
I work with the Descendants Club, not really sure.
good,
Oh, wow.
good.
Marley Johnson. I live in Edgar, Louisiana, and I'm also an employee of the Descendants Project.
Raymond Sweet, I'm accountable to the Hydro Dixon Neighborhood Association, I'm liaison and committee. And Salt and Straw is all I think of when I hear Seattle.
Oh.
Since I had the great ice cream.
All right, okay.
Pam Please, I'm a civil rights attorney. I'm from Lake Charles originally, which is in the southwest part of the state. And I'm originally Hopper. But I also have the privilege of representing the Descendants Project and then groups in St. James Parish who are pushing for suing for a moratorium on the siting of all new petrochemical facilities in the area. Lots going on in all the places.
Did we get the question out?
No, so.
Not yet, but it's also written down there.
Yeah,
Written down there,
yeah.
Well,
the-
we'll just say, so these are, not necessarily, well, for you, actually, it's probably the right order, but our question is stressors that you see in the next 10 to 20 years. So I think you were just talking about what you see as current
Yep.
stressors, and it may be some of the same that keep going on because they're not really being solved, but also new ones that you see coming out. So really open thoughts and
And we reminded everyone that there's tools in front of us. If you
You'd rather
based
write
on this
something.
discussion, want to write something down, we'll take those in. And then if we run out of time, just write it down like what's written down here, and we'll take that in as well. It's additional input. So.
I hate to say this,
Mhm.
I'm not being political, and I am.
Mhm.
When I have an adult. To hold us accountable.
Yeah.
As a nation in the next 4 years. And then whatever happens will impact the next.
And
20 years.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, it's looking at potentially the deconstruction of a lot of environmental regulation protections. Not that it was really helping us too
Right.
much yet. It
Right.
was like just starting to get to the
Get there.
point of possibly, getting some traction with, but maybe you're familiar with some of the lawsuits with the EPA against the Department of Environmental Quality. And trying to, actually get the EPA to get the cojones to
Right.
actually stand up to this paid cop, I'm gonna call them paid cop, the state regulator, which is just the handmaiden for industry to get the permits they need to operate, and then basically just turn a blind eye to it. So that lack of regulatory enforcement is gonna be a major.
Yeah, I think it also is also gonna enable our local government to continue the shady behavior that we've been showing up, since the beginning.
I think it could actually cause a lot of stress within communities, amongst further antagonizing polarization among communities, with trying to understand the consequences and then unable to do anything about it versus those that have the power to really exert their will.
Imagine somebody fighting as hard as Joy fights
for her community. And then electing her to do that. I've seen that happen in a lot of other states, Violet, Louisiana. You know, that person is a troublemaker, disturbing their good white folks. You know, and so I don't know how who votes for who there, but when you vote, when an adult can't win an election, it just shows like the power of.
That was manipulated, that race was manipulated by them putting a candidate or candidates in who's just gonna take votes away from her. See, the thing with small communities, especially like ours, you could not know anything, you're the dumbest guy on the planet, but if you are popular,
But I know
you're
you're right.
So you just put, like one of the guys that we put in the race with Josh, I grew up with him, we went to school together, never been shown.
It's your local election, right?
Yeah. He ran for parish councilman against George.
Mm-hmm.
Guy's never been in a political race, no kind of thing. I've grown up with him, went to school with him, was never the sharpest knife in the drawer. But he's there because he's known around the community, especially with younger people in that district. So when the young people come out to vote, they don't know George, but they know him. And that takes just enough votes from her.
Sally, just a clarifying question. So, I know there's a political situation that the community is concerned with. And then the clarifying question is that it's also translated onto the local level, and you're all just not just on the national side, but you're also concerned on the local side as well. Okay.
Even more so on the local level.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think dealing with this with Joy and Jewel and getting involved with this environment, like that really showed me what they mean when they say you change your government starting from going up.
Yeah.
You know, that presidential race really ain't all that cracked up.
Yeah.
You need to be your local politician because it's not a local politician that sell us out.
Yep.
You know, you look at Greenfield coming to St. John Parish. They didn't come and give public notice like they are supposed to do. They let the old people, elderly that were at home alone, talk to them, and then it's coming. And if people don't just by accident, I forgot how Joy said she found out by accident. She didn't find this out. Then the next thing we would have knew, they would have just been building that ground a little bit on top of it, and able to get them out of there by filing lawsuits because they didn't do things right. Even there's rules and regulations laid out on how y'all supposed to go about getting these permits. Our parish government allowed you all to do paperwork that's shoddy or miss this and not do that, or don't worry about this permit. Our government allowed that.
So another clarifying question. There's the saying about national issues, local solutions. That a current and also future concern of this community? From what I'm hearing, I mean, I just.
Can you define what that means to you?
So for us in Los Angeles, for example, you know, we look at the national politics. We look at what's happening in the federal government. But our governor and our mayor and our local politicians, our 88 cities and 17 special jurisdictions, you know, we take what's coming on from the federal government, and we look at that and say, okay, that doesn't necessarily apply to us. We need to either dial up on how we resolve our own local issues versus just, oh, that's what's coming down, we'll accept that. So we're empowering ourselves to make sure that our issues are resolved in the way that we think it needs to get resolved.
Yeah, I mean, this is my take on this, but I think that let's say in California, you have the benefit of having the strength and the spine of to create regulations. You also have the scale that would be necessary to create regulations. We don't have those benefits.
That's good.
So I think that to some extent the allies that we found, the tools we found in terms of advocacy, are getting largely legal avenues in the courts, because the political bodies, either the elected officials in the council or the president, they're often in cahoots with industry, or they've been structurally segmented just enough to usually vote against the interests of the community and in favor of industry. For instance, in St. James Parish, where there's I think 9 seats, and it's almost always that 5 seats are pro-industry and forcing, so even if you have, it's like, even if there's a representation, it's still minority representation, it doesn't actually change the outcomes. And, so having, also looking to other national advocacy groups like the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and that was a huge part of this St. John fight, was actually the support from the Historic Preservation.
A very innovative solution here that I
You know,
heard. Like,
yeah.
just designating something as historical. Don't touch. You can't touch that now. You know.
Well, yeah, but that was only by
Yeah.
sort of political maneuvering, I think, savvy by Joe and Joy, and
Yep.
also through all of the meetings, and also I mean, the fact is that there are some assets there, but it was by leveraging that into a, you know, community-driven consulting party process at the
Yep.
Army Corps, and then also showing the hand, forcing the company to show their hand of being a bad actor, paying off community members, you know, of trying to basically, you know, manipulate the process, falsify some, you know, not be transparent with their information they're showing. So, you know, getting that level of clarity was not gonna happen
Mhm.
outside of having some other advocacy groups that were not politically elected,
Yeah.
you know, at the national level and also the state level,
Yeah.
but, you know.
Do you see more threat from the current industry or from ones that may come in? Are there a lot more that want to come in, or just the current ones that are bad, that future ones aren't as much of a threat?
And what we know in our area, we want to industrialize as much of that as they can.
So more that would come
Right,
in.
and it's too much as it is.
Yeah.
And you don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
It's already enough.
So the historic preservation thing about that, I don't want it to sound like it's transactional. There's a reckoning that needs to happen around race and reparative, some sort of reparative accountability for slavery, and that includes the burial sites that are, we're more, you know, able to begin to locate and identify and protect. That needs to happen in and of itself. It also happens that it is throwing up somewhat of a barrier to our industry. So I don't want it to sound like it's transactional, or that there is, I mean, the Descendants Project was founded to do that work, and then they're threatened by this.
They didn't ask for it.
Right, they didn't ask for this fight, but they had to step into it when it came to them. And then in St. James, you've got more industry that's been trying to come in for years. One of the biggest new plastics facilities in the world would be if you know, the community's been able to keep that on the ropes for years. That's the Formosa site. And then over in Southwest Louisiana, you've got, what is it, Justin? I'm saying 10 more LNG facilities.
I think it's 8, but
it's 8.
it's a lot.
It's a lot. There's already 2 major ones there. And those are football size facilities, 10 more from the Gulf up the ship channel into the community of Southwest Louisiana. So, and our folks have been able to keep that at bay. The concern and the stressor is with what's coming, you're gonna have all of the dismantling, not just deregulation, but dismantling of the agencies. And at the same time, we're all affected by climate change, and storms have been, you know, increasing, and as you know, in intensity and frequency, and there's sunny day flooding. You know, I was in Lake Charles last week, and we kept getting flooding, you know, warnings, flood warnings on perfectly clear days.
Yeah, I want to talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that, because at each of these sites, which, you know, a lot of times have protected with their own proprietary revenue around them, which is not necessarily with you, but each major industrial site is a potential Superfund site. If you think about it in terms of environmental risk, you know, especially in Louisiana. You know, for instance, like there was a major oil refinery in Plaquemines Parish, and it was the Allied Oil Refinery that got inundated with storm surge. They didn't have a high enough back levee to protect against it, so it got flooded. Of course, once it gets flooded, you have that kind of brackish water. You can't reopen the refinery. It just suddenly becomes a huge toxic Superfund site, and it also becomes really an unsaleable property, huge liability for the parish. But each new plant that's built in the state
becomes
is a huge potential liability, you know, for the state.
And what responsibility does the owner of that plant take if it It's no longer
as little as
usable.
possible.
Oops, yeah, there's the one right now in Ascension Parish or something that they shut down. And it's like a year or two ago, they shut it down. And the people are complaining because they can smell it and it's just sitting there, you know.
Oh,
the company-
Shell?
Is that like the one with the red dust you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
That's the alumina.
alumina, yeah.
Side.
Yes.
It's a
It's just
huge
sitting there,
shipment,
and
just sitting there. Yep,
the pond.
that's right, the retaining pond,
pond
yep.
is backed up.
Just sitting
We
there.
actually had that experience yesterday.
But that one's actually
That's the-
in
that one's in
operation.
operation.
That's the
Yeah.
last one. So if it
That's
goes
the
out of
one.
operation, you just have a huge, giant, field that nobody's doing anything to maintain.
In that big
It-
pile.
you know.
Okay, so you saw
That's
yesterday.
different parish.
Oh, different parish, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You saw the one yesterday, that's.
Yeah, right in
Yeah.
front of your
Right,
facility,
and it
yeah.
had the big tall
Yeah.
hills of black cocoa dust or whatever it is.
Yeah.
and
They're
the
covered
big
in
tall
red
hills
dust.
of red.
Yeah.
Aluminum dust.
Yeah.
Right, so that one
bauxite.
is sitting in
Yeah.
Ascension Parish,
Essential, okay.
It's a different.
out of operation.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff is just sitting there, and now it's no one's knocking it down, shipping it off anywhere, so it's just getting blown all over
There's
the
a
surrounding
huge-
areas.
Yeah.
And it's bad odor, and the company is telling the state, oh, we don't have the something $1 million it's gonna take to clean it up
Mm,
Right.
and properly shut
Right.
it down, and so it's just sitting there.
mm.
Right. And it doesn't get remediated.
Right, it doesn't get fixed.
Unless
yeah.
the money comes from, so there's no like fund, it's not like part of the plan at all in terms of taxing these companies. They kind of create a fund for remediating this, like, we're dealing with it after the fact.
And so there's no legal way to force them to spend up their money.
With what money? You can
With
force
the
it.
company's money.
Yeah,
Do the
yeah,
companies
all
claim
these-
they
A
don't
lot
have-
of companies are out of state or even international companies, you know?
We're at
And
the
that's-
2-minute mark, just let you know.
That's, there've been efforts to bring these legacy cases and, force cleanup. It takes a long time to litigate this, and now we have, and I think, the other stressor is that we're in a state politically that has a moderate governor and a supermajority legislature. And, he himself has weighed in on the Descendants Project. Right?
Mhm.
So it's like, and we had this experience in St. James where you had parish council members for the first time ever voicing concern about the decommissioning of a facility, but it was a solar facility.
Mm.
Remember, they were talking about, they needed a plan for decommissioning. There's never that kind of conversation about these.
Petrochemical.
Petrochemical companies, just let them in and worry, and don't even worry about it later.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, Lily, I think some of these, they're built for a certain lifespan.
Mhm.
But Bridge Pipeline, they predicted it would have a 90-year lifespan, but I said, the most recent technology. And we're at the end of some of these, and, this is aging infrastructure.
Mhm.
Yeah, for old plants.
Older plants that have been there for 50
Yeah.
years.
We see it, I mean, there's a number of plants that they're thinking about shutting down in the state. And there's not really any kind of like remediation fund or plan. I mean, they're just gigantic liabilities. And a lot of it is out in Lake Charles
Yeah.
and Sulphur, Westlake,
Yeah.
huge brownfield sites for older.
Well, and those were
Yeah.
in the 40s.
I know, some of them have been existing for a long time. Yeah.
And the federal government is not, it's not being asked by the community, or there's no resources to do that, or.
The hope was that with the IRA, what was interesting in some of the meetings when the IRA was passed, we started hearing port board members
Mhm.
talking about the money that's in renewables and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So all of a sudden, you saw that if the money is there and it can come, but I was shocked to hear how fast they could turn on a dime with this messaging.
Yeah.
And this was in St. James in particular. And I think if there were reliable streams of funding, to put people toward decommissioning some of these sites.
Yeah.
That you could have a conversation about it. But we don't get that far.
We need to roll to one more before lunch. So
All right.
thank y'all so much.
I
Yeah.
think too, they do all of this. And the government don't give them tax cuts. Don't collect the proper tax revenue.
Right.
And so we don't have the things that other parishes have, like St. Charles Parish, for example, is a very good example of collecting the money they owe from the refineries.
Mm.
very robust. police
Oh, I
force.
see. So
Their
they owe it from the
bylaws,
individuals, but not the companies. Okay.
Their parks are very beautiful.
They collect it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Everywhere. Then you come to the parishes like ours, where the government gives them tax breaks. If you was charging taxes that you're supposed to charge them while they're in existence, that gives you the money for the fund to clean it up when it ages out.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
LA Metro, I mean.
The Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Does it ring a- Yeah, doesn't ring a bell, but yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
So the plants have no obligation for decommissioning. And it's
No,
not their.
because it's under the grandfather clause. That's the thing. So there's that barrier in the grandfather clause.
That says that, no, you can't go back and get it.
Yeah, and if you want to go back, then you have to sue me, you know, that kind of thing.
Oh, welcome.
Hi, y'all, come on in.
Hello. Hi. We're gonna have. Do we need more chairs?
Yeah, we'll be great.
Oh, do you have enough chairs?
I think we're just right.
One, two.
Yeah.
Just right? Okay.
No, we have one more.
One more coming. Okay, let's grab one. Welcome. Oh, okay, so it didn't quite end up even out, but it's okay. Okay, what, somebody else coming in?
Yeah.
Back a little bit.
I'll bring it back down. You did say
It's okay.
that we came from originally.
Anything like move a little bit more.
Okay.
All right. I think,
Okay. Yeah, anyway, welcome. This is the third of your, so I guess you're used to these at this point. And we have one of the three questions, and that question.
On the table.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just going to read it.
Okay,
Yeah.
is, what are you looking at in the next 10 to 20 years that some of the considerations and stressors in communities? And you've had in other groups, what some of the current issues are, but looking forward, what do you consider some of the concerns? So we'll do a quick around the table. Andy Dannenberg from University of Washington in Seattle. I work in environmental health and urban planning. And let's see. Go this way.
Go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Jackie Bingham with the Water Green Infrastructure Collective and a partner of Water West Coast.
Shamina Levine, CEO of Louisiana. Daisy LaRue, Deputy Director of Louisiana Water. Was involved today to a public health responsibility. Michelle over University of
Chris Leland from LA Metro and part of the committee.
Joe Banner, let's get this project.
John Bann, National Academies, and from New Orleans.
Okay, so open, thoughts about what concerns and stressors the next 10 to 20 years?
And just a reminder, because we're a big group, we might run out of time.
Yeah.
There's like a bunch of tools in front of us. You
Yeah,
can write in
you
the
can write
spreadsheet, and
notes.
the paper and the notes. If something comes up and you're about to leave, just write it down and we'll take it.
I think when I'm thinking about the next 10 to how many years?
10 to 20, but that's a loose number.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about everything in perspective and like, what can we do in the next 70 days with the current administration before they go out and the new administration comes in, as it relates to EJ, really pushing out the IRA funds to make sure that the community groups and organizations get those funding to stand their community organizations and groups up to be ready for whatever the fight is coming. Also, many of us in the room were very instrumental in getting the Biden administration to enact this temporary pause on approving new LNG permits, and the study is about to be released. We've been very active in it. I think with that study coming out and seeing that it's not in the public interest to, stop approving those LNG projects, I think that's gonna be something that many of our organizations are gonna be working on in the next few days. But I think looking at all of that with the new administration coming in, I believe that what's gonna be very stressful is going to be trying to hold on to the things that we fought so hard for the last 16 years, 12 years, you know, from the Obama administration to now, making sure that within the state of Louisiana, we still have those protections that we fought for. Like I know Ryan St. James, the Vessel Project, we have this field petition that we're trying to hold the state accountable for polluting over the legal limit. The state, under John Bell Edwards, we were getting somewhere. Now we have a new governor, so it's like we're going backwards. With the EPA, we got somewhere with the PM 2.5 rule, but now we have a new EPA administrator, so it's like everything we've done for the last how many years, it's like we're gonna be fighting it again. So I think a remedy for that stress is that, this is just me, for the next 4 years, our community groups, organizations, and grassroots movement should be focused on ensuring that those organizations in those communities are taken care of, like prioritizing care and joy for those community groups, making sure that they have the things, their basic needs met. So that people are in a position to fight or refight everything that we fought for. And I think that's gonna be stressful. It's gonna be very stressful to think about yourself or your family or your community when you're trying to save the world.
Thank you.
For me, you know, what comes to mind is over the next 10 years, what my biggest concern when I think about stressors for our community is piggybacking off of her point is normalizing this new normal, but it's really not normal. Nothing about this new normal that we've been experiencing over the last couple of years is normal. It's not normal for us to be spending $4, $5 on the loaf of bread, $6, $4, $5 on a dozen of eggs, having boiled water advisories every day. Nothing about that is normal, but we're in a space now where the theory is let's become okay with this, normalize it as like this standard starting point. And my fear or stressor is that are we going to get back to that place of let's get back to what's normal. Let's get back to having fresh. Let's get back to having affordable homeowners insurance. Let's get back to having living in properties ourselves or producing and developing properties that are not mold infested because they haven't been able to be renovated from storms prior to. Let's get back to not feeling like your only option is to go to one area or the other. And that's my biggest concern and stressor is that those who don't always have the voice, will that be the new normal? When it's really not normal. Everybody, all of our community should have a voice and reason for understanding what they have access to.
And it culminates in everything else we've been talking about in the other groups as well, but I think what I'm here also hearing, and I'm certainly feeling it, is that it's enormous. It's not sustainable. It's not, and we don't know, I mean, we don't know which direction it's gonna go, but the uncertainty is there, and nobody is, and nobody's able to provide any possibility of where it's gonna go. It's not sustainable. This level of stressors and the ongoing economic stressors and I'm really glad you're talking about this. Sustaining some groups that need to work, so like that's they're in that life like the hope. All right, we're gonna at least try to maintain some of these things that we need to maintain because we have so many things we can't help beyond this way. It's just there's too many stressors. People say, oh, well, it's flooded in New Orleans forever. It's always, yeah, exactly. People,
It's not.
It's like, well, it's happened forever. It's, hurricanes have been there and this, it's like, no, it's not the same. it's shifted in such a way that people are very, there's a hopelessness, but there's like an attempt to try to keep, the organizations are doing something to try to keep some hope so that there's an anchor.
Yeah.
So that when we're looking at the next 10, 20 years, you ask this question, we're all silent because we're like, we voted.
Yeah.
What's happening tomorrow?
I mean, I'm glad you read that idea of like, I gotta anchor some things. We can't even.
Yeah.
Because we all know it's just not tenable.
Just have a clarifying question.
Oh, no, go.
'Cause I'm trying to digest what I'm hearing. Can you, are you able to kind of point out to what is in the community's control? What is, and whether it's structural or not? And then, regardless of whether it's structural or not, how do you, in case of being sustainable, how do you actually address those issues?
I think we all
Yeah.
take all of our comments over.
Yeah.
our previous.
Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
We did talk.
Mhm.
Talked
Yeah.
talked a lot about this, but for me, it's very structural.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, everything from infrastructure to insurance to, the big catastrophic events.
Yeah.
The small catastrophic events not being, insurance going up, so when do you're not gonna say to your insurance company, because your insurance might go up, and you're not afford it, therefore, how much damage are you gonna sustain to your house that you can't, may not afford to fix, then you've got the next thing that happens, small, right?
And to your point in the very first room, when you mentioned about the banks who are those primary investing partners.
Yeah.
Who, we're thinking, oh, it's the bank. Well, no, it's not really the bank. It's the financer of the bank. It's the person that's saying, well, hey, we're the ones with the money. We're the.
And they make money off the storms. They make the people, all this, they're making money on every time there's a disaster for us. They make bank off of that, even just picking up the trash. So they, like they see dollar signs.
I do want to highlight something that I'm noticing is that every last one of us in this room are representing an organization. And we're under stress with these questions because what we're trying to do is summarize briefly everything. Each of us is trying to save the world in our own individual way. And if you listen to what people are saying, it may not even be their organization's mission or vision.
Yeah.
But the way you have to go around the world to get back to what your organization does, is very stressful. So when you're talking about like what we can control, what we can't control, some of the things that we said, for example, that the fact that many of our communities get boil water notices every day, that is an infrastructure problem. We're running out of drinking water in the state of Louisiana. It's a fact. The salt dome is collapsing in my community. You're right, the coastline is receding. We can't bring the coastline back. Now, there are some ways and things we can do, like, when we talk about plastics, this is Joe's area, it's not mine. But again, we all have to do all of these things to get to our thing, right? So, but we can't bring the coastline back. We can't bring back the wetlands that have been obliterated by these man-made structures that they put on top of the wetlands. What we can do is continue to fight for them to first stop approving new infrastructure in our communities. What we can do is continue to tell our stories and lift our voices about what the solutions are that we want and we need for our community, and we can be an example. And I think each of these organizations are, but I can only talk about mine. So Vessel Project, for example, is a mutual aid organization. So if she calls me and say, I need my rent paid, I'm gonna pay her rent. I'm not gonna ask her how much money you make, where do you live, what color is your hair, how many children you have, do they have the same baby daddy? Because some of these people ask these questions. I'm just gonna pay her rent. And her rent is gonna be paid. And she's gonna be, my rent is paid, I can get through this month. If she calls me and say, I need some food, I'm going to buy her food. She's gonna get the food. That's it. That's how my organization operates. But then I'm gonna say, hey, Daisy, we paid your rent, we bought your food. We have a community meeting coming up on Sunday. We would like to have you there.
We're gonna follow up with Daisy. Daisy, you come to the community meeting? Well, Daisy, if you can't come to the community meeting, you know someone else who can come to the meeting? Bring them to the community meeting. At the community meeting, we're gonna talk about everything that's going on in the community. There's a hearing, there's a permit, there's a city council meeting. Daisy, if you can't come, who can come? Daisy, I gotta watch my kids. Daisy, bring your kids. You got a babysitter. We're gonna talk about those things. And then we're also gonna say, Daisy, what is it that your community needs? What do you want to see in this community? Daisy's gonna say, well, my community doesn't have a bike lane. Well, Daisy, you know, I'm technically supposed to be fighting LNG, right? That's what this funding is for, because that's what the funding is gonna tell you. But how is getting Daisy a bike lane fighting LNG? Because now Daisy's gonna see this community organization not only paid my rent, bought me food, brought me here and educated me about what's going on. They provided this bike lane that I asked for because they went to the city council meeting. We fighting against this LNG plant, I'm gonna be the first one in line. So that's the way our organizations have had to work and strategize in order to meet just some of the basic needs of the community. That goes into the larger things, because then when you look at that on a larger scale, now David's connected to me, I'm connected to Chanel. Chanel is having a large rally on Friday at the Capitol. That's what part they're going. Daisy, we going to the Capitol. We gonna let the, so that is how we working together in unity. But first, you notice, meeting the need of the community member first.
Yeah.
Because if any of you grew up in church like me, when that pastor was up there preaching, if I was hungry, I'm thinking about what I'm eating. I don't know nothing that pastor said. And that is the same thing we're trying to say to our community. If I'm hungry, if I don't know where I'm gonna sleep, if I don't know how I'm gonna take care of my children, I could care less about voting for a governor, about changing some type of permit. I just need to eat today. So you have to meet the needs of that community member first, and then you eventually move that community member to a level to where now my organization, who started with just me, I have 7 people, and all of them are everywhere. They're speaking. We're bringing 30 people to New York. And that's the only way we're gonna change it. We're not gonna be able to just say we wanna stop Formosa. We're gonna have to say, I need to make sure Chanel is okay. And then Chanel has everything, and Chanel is gonna then stop Formosa. So that's my idea of how, you know, to your question, how we're going to.
That's really innovative, actually.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I've been doing for 4 years, telephone.
Yeah.
No one wants to.
Who hasn't said anything that they want to make sure they get it? Okay.
Oh, Andy, sorry. Jill has just trying to speak and then go to Chanel.
Just quickly, I just wanted to state, no one wants to be strong, brave, or resilient, or magical. We have to be that way, but no one chooses to be that way. So a lot of times we use that as compliment, and they're not compliments, it's just survival.
I think that's a key word, survival. And in the course of surviving, all of these, and I wrote it down, this ecosystem of advocacies come to focus. So.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as a consideration would be getting climate change under control. Because if it's not under control, we're gonna see more hurricanes, more natural disasters, more earthquakes, because we do have earthquakes here. Like, those doesn't get reported, but we do have that happening. And like in St. James alone, there was an earthquake that shifted a gypsum pile that's like 200 feet high. They want to extend it another 100 feet, but it has radioactive material in it. It has heavy metals in it. And so if we don't get it under control, we're gonna see more natural disasters. We're gonna see people's roofs being blown off. And then that starts the whole cycle all over again. It's like a never ending cycle. And so that is definitely a consideration. And so we have to stop emitting so many greenhouse gases every day, every year.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm so happy you said that too, because when we think about climate change, every year our hurricane season, I don't know if anybody else feels it, but it's worse.
It's intense
and worse.
Yep.
Every week, I mean, we've had 3 storms in the Gulf in the last And they were like, they just came, developed.
But remember, lately it's happened in December, and so that not only are we getting more, the season is not.
Once we get in the eye of the storm, before we would get storms, I never remember getting the eye of the storm keep passing over us, and that's a difference between the eye and like the total storm.
And they're coming in so rapidly, intensely, you know, they're coming in at Cat 3, Cat 4. You know, so it's just, it's gonna be devastation.
Yeah, especially when we have an administration that's like, oh, come.
Which goes back to the point of starting over, because when you think about these storms coming inland and they're devastating more homes, not only is it devastating more homes, but it's also devastating our infrastructure. So when you look at the fact that in Louisiana, in communities, when it's just a normal rainy day, in addition to the flooding, if the flooding doesn't happen, we still guarantee to lose our electricity. Like the wind can barely blow and the lights go out. And so we have a grid issue here, and like how, one of the things that we've done in many of the community groups here is many of us were active in making sure that Devontae Lewis got elected to the PSC. Well, that goes back to education, because nobody knew that the PSC position had anything to do with utilities. Like, we didn't know that. We were like, public service commissioner, oh, he's on public service. We didn't know that how deeply connected those things were, how deeply connected that position is to our loved ones who are like in prison. When we try to make calls to them, and those calls are expensive. So anyway, saying all that to say, getting community members, like the people at the table, to run for to combat some of these issues, because as long as there's people in office who don't look like us, who didn't come from the community, they're never gonna understand. This is gonna probably be a Facebook post later, but I was gonna say, for me, for example, I'm getting my PhD. Now I was gonna say, it doesn't matter how many degrees you have, how much educational training you have. If you ain't been through it, don't tell me how to go through it. Like, if you don't have, I have 6 children in grade. If you don't have any, don't tell me what I should do with my kids. You know, I don't care and I think that's what it's gonna take. People who have lived through these experiences, who also in addition has that knowledge to be in these positions before we get the thing. And when all y'all run, I'm gonna come to my.
I just want to call real quick. We're at the 2-minute mark, and Jackie, I hadn't heard from you. I don't know if you had anything to.
And
to
Jeff,
tell
did
us.
we?
Jackie or Jeff? 10 to 20 years. That's all right.
I envision the future to be tough with everything, climate change, lots of people, drainage issues, urban heat island effect, you know, we lost over 100,000 trees due to Katrina and Ida, and we still haven't restored that. We were at 30% canopy, and now we're at like 18.5. And it's hot.
It's so hot.
It's hot. It's really hot. We need to reduce the cement. We need to get a lot of cement out, and just, I think that would, reducing the urban heat island effect will also serve the people. Because when it gets hot, you know, that brings on a lot of other stresses in terms of just dealing with everyday life. You know, when you're hot or you don't have the cooling things, it brings on health issues and just life.
Yeah. Any last word about that?
I think it's really. Big factor.
Yeah.
And like, I've been, you know, I remember like in high school, like, climate change is, you know, it's going to happen. But it's happened. Like, it's like, it's like kind of, it's not too late to fix the issue, but it feels pretty hopeless at this point, especially when the global issue, it's not even just Louisiana emissions, we're talking global emissions. And I think it still all goes back to
the system, like even if you fix one issue, it's still the system that increases in Louisiana that keeps all these issues alive, these stressors alive. I don't think if we can't get to that root and pull the root out, it's really hard to not hopeless. I think we continue to move forward as we do, but I still do think that getting more racism and capitalism, that's always going to continue to drive this conversation. Education, why did you see who gets what, who doesn't get what?
Don't you think they have bamboozled us with climate change, like, they dangle these, you know, polar
That's about
bears
lunchtime.
and
That's
the
where-
turtle.
That's what got me interested, though. I was like,
Black people, we do like,
yeah.
and then, you know, all the commercials will be about the ozone layer, you would see like white people spraying hairspray out, we don't use hairspray, we use something else. So we-
That's for, that was for rich white people to donate money, so.
We don't put trees, we wear deodorant, like, I'm like, this is not about us. But all the time, for the people who were benefiting the most,